Welcome to Truth and Company podcast. I'm your host, John the Truth Dioria, and today we got an outstanding guest. My next guest has been doing comedy for around 18 years and has been involved in numerous theater productions throughout his career. His performances have earned him multiple awards, including Best of Fringe in Kansas City and Tucson, Best Stand-Up or Variety Performance by San Antonio's Bexar Stage, and Chicago's Best Stand-Up Comedian by Chicago Reader. His work extends beyond comedy, though. He is also a writer and an actor with appearances on ABC, NBC, Netflix, True TV, and Pop Network. He is the founder of the stand-up collective 100 Proof Comedy. He was the host of the live week late night talk show Talk Hard. He has put out 2 comedy albums, Tell Me You're Proud of Me, that debuted at #1 on Amazon's comedy charts, and Stocking Stuffer. His one-man show, The Devil on the Wall, was the only solo show named Best of Fest at the 2018 Kansas City Fringe Festival. His independent streaming special, Big Dad Energy, which was named Best Stand-Up Special at the Laugh After Dark Comedy Fest, is available on Amazon Prime, so definitely go check that out. If you already have, great. Check out all his other stuff on YouTube or wherever you can find it. His website's going across the bottom of my screen as well. If you haven't and you're just learning about him tonight on my podcast, definitely go there and check out his special after our podcast. He's worked with some amazing names in the industry, including Damon Wayans, Hannibal Buress, Cameron Esposito, Oscar Isaac, Chris Redd, WWE's big man, the Jake the Snake Roberts, for all you wrestling fans out there, Alicia Keys, Tech Nine, Dana Carvey, and so many more people in the industry. And he has actually served our country in the Army National Guard. So let's hear it for that as well. And he is a cancer survivor. So let me bring on comedian, writer, and actor, Jamie Campbell.
Hey, how's it going? I feel like you know more about me than I do. I forgot some of those things.
Yeah, I suppose you've done so many, man. It's hard. I mean, really, realistically, that's a small little group I put together. We could talk about everything you've done in your career, and it would just take the entire podcast as an intro.
Well, it's been 18 years, so I've put in a lot of work. The thing about the performing arts is, if you're going to make a living, you kind of have to do a little bit of everything, and I'm still having fun 18 years in and still finding new ways to get excited about making people laugh and telling stories.
And let me start with this. Why comedy?
Well, these days especially, I think that when you look around at the world, there is so much division and there's so many people that are at odds with each other. And I think finding joy is more important, more vital now than ever. That's not why I got into comedy, but it's definitely why I still do comedy. I think when you get a group of people laughing together in a room, it's hard to feel divided because you found something that you have in common. Whatever that thing is that made the whole room laugh in that brief moment in time, we're all connected. And I think that's a special thing that the world needs now more than ever. I started doing comedy just kind of on a whim. It's making people laugh is something that I've always been good at. Even when I was, younger, I dealt with like a lot of abuse, and my family constantly moved around. I went to 12 different schools between kindergarten and graduating high school. And so I was constantly the new kid. And when you're the new kid, you're either going to get beat up or you're going to make friends fast. And humor was kind of my defense mechanism early on. And I saw a lot of dark stuff as a kid. And when you're encountering things that are dark and tragic, you either find a way to find some light in them and find a way to laugh at the absurdity of your situation, or you wallow in despair. And so for me, laughter was survival. And so it's something that I honed as a kid. And now as an adult, I'm in a good place. I'm not surrounded by despair in my personal life. My personal life is good, but I want to create that levity and that joy for other people who need that escape.
So let's go back to you just brought up being in school and the different schools and things like that. So did your comedy ever get you beat up because you were joking or
Absolutely. I could think of one instance, and this might get a little bit graphic in the violent area. We're talking about me getting beat up. I was at a bus stop when I was a little kid. And when you're a poor kid, like your mama jokes, people take them so personally because we don't have much. We don't have any possessions. We have very little to be proud of. Our family, though, that's something that we do have. And I remember I was at the bus stop, and this is like third grade. And there's another kid, and like your mama joke started becoming popular around my neighborhood. And so this kid, he comes up to me and all the other kids, and he makes basically a list. He goes down and lists every family member he can think of. And he goes, nobody at this bus stop better make fun of my mama, my dad, my grandma, my aunties, my cousins. And he just lists every member of his family. And so I'm a little smart ass. And so I go up to him and I go, hey, just to make sure, that I don't accidentally offend you, I want to make sure that I know everybody that I'm not allowed to talk about. It's your mom, your dad, your auntie, your grandmama. And I list all of the family members. But this kid wasn't very bright. So he took it to mean, as I'm listing every family member, in his mind, that was actually me making fun of literally everybody that he told me not to make fun of. And this kid picks up a brick. Not a fist. He's not fighting me. And when you're poor and you live in poor neighborhoods, bricks are just around because the buildings are crumbling. So we're at the bus stop. This kid picks up a brick and just wails on me. Next thing I know, I'm walking back home. I decide maybe school's not for me that day. I'm not waiting for the bus anymore. And I got like a crimson mask. I look like an extra from The Walking Dead. And I finally get home. The look on my mom's face was sheer terror. But it turned out to be fine. I don't have a scar or anything. I'm okay. But I tell you what, I don't talk trash about anybody's mom anymore.
so have like the comedy that you portray even now just the way you just told that story, have you, unless I've missed it somewhere in your career, but have you ever wanted to be the main character on a sitcom? Is that
Oh,
part
yeah.
of your goal?
I would love to do that. I don't know exactly how to go about doing that. But yeah, I would love to have a sitcom. I released that special Big Dad Energy, and the idea behind Big Dad Energy is that people assume I'm a dad. I give off a dad vibe. I have dad energy, but I'm not a dad. My wife and I, we didn't meet each other until we were almost 40 years old. And when you meet somebody at that age, like you either have to decide, we're going to have kids right away, or we're just going to basically let the clock run out. And that's what we decided to do. We made that decision. I guess we're just not going to have kids. And I always thought I would be a dad. Uh, it wasn't one of those things that was a hard decision, honestly. Knowing my wife and I's age, it would be very dangerous for us in our 40s to have kids, and I didn't want to put her at risk. But at the same time, there is this little sense of loss. And I think that there is something fun about the idea of being somebody who kind of has a dad vibe and a dad feel, but doesn't find his significant other until middle age. And so, he's not a dad, and they're having this adventure. She works a real job. I work as a comedian, and I think that is rife with sitcom potential. So I'd love to do that. I just don't have any major connections at a network. But if anybody's interested, holler. Because I've got plenty of stories.
Yeah, because I was going to say, like I mentioned in the very beginning, you're actually a writer, so you can write your own sitcom scripts.
I can't. A lot of the writing that I do is actually more dramatic. I'm very good at taking heavier situations and then finding ways for us to laugh within them without diminishing the seriousness of what we're talking about. So most of my screenplays are either in the horror or the drama genre, believe it or not.
Yeah, because I read that you've been in plays since, basically since you've been out of diapers, more or less, correct?
Well, sort of. I was in some plays like in middle school, but I really started actively doing theater in college. I auditioned for the Trail of Tears drama. So where I went to college was in Tahlequah, Oklahoma, and it's where the Trail of Tears ended. So it's the capital of the Cherokee Nation. There's a rich Native American history there. And I was brand new to college. I was fresh out of basic training. I joined the National Guard in order to pay for college. And so this new kid in town, I don't know anybody. And I thought maybe I would audition for a play. I had no idea this was a professional production, but it ended up being a play that year. They brought in Tony nominee Joe Sears, and he was the director, and he loved my audition monologue. And I ended up getting cast in a professional production the first time that I tried it. And I spent all summer around journeyman professional actors, and their stories kind of inspired me. And so that next semester in college, I changed my major to theater. And by the time I had graduated college, I was in 16 main stage productions and knew that I wanted to be an entertainer professionally for the rest of my life.
So, what are some of the I mean, like 18 years of you've traveled, like I said, you've done all these different shows, you've done writing, you've done acting. I mean, just give me a couple off the top of your head, some of the moments that you are more proud of.
Sure. When I was in Chicago, and I lived in Chicago for 8 years, I studied at the famed Second City, got to walk the halls with a lot of the heroes that I had growing up, the people that I watched on screen, Bill Murray, John Belushi, Mike Myers, Tina Fey, Stephen Colbert, all these really great comedic names had started there. And going through their class program is the reason I moved to Chicago, because I got into a full-time program through the Second City. But when I was there in Chicago, it actually wasn't on the Second City stage that a lot of the most exciting things happened. It was actually kind of in the independent circuit doing theater, sketch comedy, and stand-up. And there was a place called the Comedy Sports Theater and the Annoyance Theater that were kind of the two places that really gave me opportunities. And the Annoyance Theater, they cast me in a play called The Rahm Emanuel Story. And this is when Rahm Emanuel was the mayor of Chicago. And it was basically kind of a comedic sketch comedy telling of the life of Rahm Emanuel. And the show ran for a year and a half every Saturday night. And so it was the first time that I was in a long-running production that was, playing to sell out crowds every week. That was a big deal to me. Another huge deal to me was, you mentioned it earlier when you mentioned my bio. I hosted a live late-night talk show called Talk Hard there, and I had a group of some of the funniest people in Chicago's comedy scene writing and helping produce and create sketches and segments. And every Friday night at midnight, this show ran, and it ran for 17 months straight, so almost a year and a half. Every single Friday, we would write an entirely new show and put it up on its feet. And it was really like a trial by fire. I learned so much from doing that show. By the end of it, by doing it a year and a half, I was so physically and mentally exhausted from doing an entirely new show every week. And it's not like I was getting paid what a regular talk show host gets paid. The pay was negligible at best, but it was a stage in one of the best theaters in Chicago that was allowing me to go out, try new things, and create. And for me, there was probably no better education that I could have got than doing things that both succeeded and failed at different points throughout that year and a half. And then,
go ahead.
And then in Kansas City, when I moved here, I started doing some solo shows. I did a solo storytelling show that I toured the country with. And probably the biggest thing that I've done here was that Big Dad Energy comedy special, which was a huge undertaking. And I'm so grateful that some filmmakers that I met came and saw my show at the Kansas City Fringe Festival, the KC Fringe. They loved it so much that they decided to produce it. I wouldn't have been able to do that if they had not basically asked me if I was interested in having them produce it. So Dylan Edward Allen was the producer, and Jacob Allen Clark was the director of the show. And I'll probably be eternally grateful for them because it's opened up a lot of doors for me.
Okay. I'm glad you brought up Chicago because I want you to explain something to the fans that probably, if they've never been to Chicago or they're not familiar with comedy down there, they might not have any idea about this place. So Explain to me what the shithole in Chicago is.
Okay, I have not thought about the shithole in a while. I don't even know if the shithole's running anymore, but it used to be, for me, my favorite place to do comedy. It was this very punk rock independent venue. And my friend Zach Bartz and a group of his friends ran it. And it was sort of a secret venue. Like, this was before Don't Tell. Don't Tell comedy is all over the country, and it takes some of its ideas from shows that are like what the Shithole was. Now, what these guys would do is they would book a secret lineup, and they would have it. Usually there was this kind of attic space that they turned into a performance space. Basically, these were a bunch of roommates that rented out a house, and they turned the attic into a live performance venue. And they also did this at a few other places, including, I think, at one point they were producing shows at the warehouse where they make Cards Against Humanity. But I loved particularly going to that attic. And when they would have a show in the attic, all they would do is they would post on social media, tonight there's a show at the Shithole, message for details. And you would have to send them a DM or an email, and they would message you back the details of the time of the show and the address. And so every audience member, they had to go through the process of inquiring about the show, letting them know they were interested in the show, and then showing up. And everybody kind of felt like they were in on something unique and special. The shows were always free. They were donation based. And everybody that was there, because they all felt like they were a part of some secret special thing, they laughed so much louder. They were excited to be there, and they were the best audiences you could ever perform for. The Shithole was amazing.
Okay. Now, I read that you grew up a WWE fan. Is that true?
Oh, I was a huge WWE fan. I was a Hulkamaniac as a kid. As a matter of fact, I used to have this fantasy that Hulk Hogan would marry my mom and be my stepdad. Yeah. You know, I'd call him dad. He'd call me brother. It would be great. This
So
is
how
before he ever made the racist comments. I didn't know. I mean, back then he was friends with Mr. T. How could you know?
So then how did you end up working with Jake the Snake Roberts?
Oh, let me tell you, I've had some really cool encounters with various professional wrestlers. And one of the biggest things was a good friend of mine, Nick Hausman. He worked for a local professional wrestling outfit out of Joliet. They were called Blitz Pro Wrestling, and they would bring in big guys who had previously been in the WWE or been other big names. And Nick was a good friend of mine, and he had me host a podcast years ago where we would kind of review old wrestling pay-per-views, and then he would bring us in to kind of meet fans and do things at some of those events. And at one of the events, I got to be a referee for a casket match. Like, I'm not a referee. I'm not involved regularly in pro wrestling. This was just a like, cool, you're here. Do you want to do this? And I was like, yeah. And it ended up being the very last appearance in public by Paul Bearer as a manager, and I refereed in that match. I ended up doing a local commercial with Hacksaw Jim Duggan. There was another event where I actually got put in the sleeper hold by Brutus the Barber Beefcake, and he gave me a haircut in the middle of the ring. All sorts of cool things happened. So because I had developed that relationship with those guys, when Jake the Snake Roberts decided he was going to start doing a storytelling show and take it on tour, they reached out to me to see if I would help them produce the show. And so I teamed up with some friends at Chicago Underground Comedy, and we put together the very first live storytelling show that Jake the Snake ever did. And I got to be the host and perform on the show. So the very first one that he ever did, I was the host on. I think that's a pretty cool little thing to have on my resume.
Okay, so now I also read somewhere now, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because, like I said, a lot of people know that you're a clean comic now, and we'll get into that in a minute. But I read that you did acid at Disney World when you were younger. Can you tell me about that story?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Okay, so Disney World hosts this annual event. It's called Grad Night. And they've been doing this since, I think, the late 70s. And I think it's still going on. And basically, the way Grad Night works, they keep Disney World, and I think they do it at Disneyland as well. And they keep the theme park open overnight. And high school seniors from all over the area, they bus in and they go and they hang out at Disney all night long. Now, it's not just the rides that are open. They also bring in a bunch of bands. And the year that I did Grad Night, the Backstreet Boys were there, and also Real Big Fish were there, and a bunch of other big-time musical groups. And right before, I remember, like, our bus left the parking lot, right before it left the parking lot to take us to Disney World, the police show up and they bring these drug sniffing dogs with them. And so every single one of the high school students has to get out their backpack and let the police dogs smell their backpack because they want to make sure nobody's bringing any marijuana into Disney. But here's the thing. I don't know if you know this, John. LSD doesn't have a scent. The dogs can't smell it. They can't detect it. So it was the only drug that anybody was able to sneak in. And one kid must have known in advance that they weren't going to be able to do that because he brought a bunch of acid and he was selling it on the bus. Now, I'm not a guy that knows how to get acid. I'm not somebody that's ever wanted to do acid. I was a clean-cut kid. I was a captain of the wrestling team. I was an athlete. But where I was at in my life at the time, my dad was going through a divorce. I was feeling like I was a little bit on my own. I didn't know if I was going to be able to go to college. And so I was kind of in one of those vulnerable states where, my mind was open to trying things, shall we say. And so my friend pops down on the seat next to mine and goes, "Hey, you want to do some acid?" And I was like, believe it or not, I think I do. And so we did the acid, and I just remember thinking, everybody always talks about how bad drugs were. I grew up during the war on drugs. Just say no propaganda was everywhere. I was part of the DARE program, and parents would scare you. They'd say, you do drugs once. Next thing you know, you're selling your body on the street for your next fix. And that absolutely happens. People get addicted to crack, they get addicted to heroin. But the problem is parents in that era, they put all of the drugs into the same category. All drugs are not the same. LSD is not heroin, it's not crack. Nobody's selling their body for acid. And so I was surprised, honestly, that oh, this isn't so bad. I had a great time. I watched the Backstreet Boys perform. I went on Space Mountain, which was amazing. I mean, if you're going to try a mind-altering substance, what better time than when you're going to a place called the Magic Kingdom? I have no regrets.
Okay, I saw that and I thought I got to ask him about this story. I got to hear this. So now, also, did you? And you can touch on this if you want to. If you don't want
Sure.
to, that's fine. Did you have some mental health issues earlier in your comedy career that you had to deal with?
Yeah, I've had them all over. I'm bipolar, and it's hereditary. And so that's been a big thing for me, my mental health journey. I also, was not surrounded by the best role models growing up. And so I had a lot of issues to deal with. Early in my career, I was very cynical. I self-medicated a lot with alcohol. And I was somebody who was kind of angry and struggling. And it didn't help that at the same time, while I'm pursuing comedy for the first decade of my career, I was 2 steps away from being out on the streets and, unhoused. And, it was scary. So, I put a lot on the line as I was going after my dream. I wish I could go back and tell myself, hey, you don't have to be in such a hurry. You can make some better choices and take care of yourself. But honestly, it was meeting my wife that really helped me to get things together. And now, I go to therapy regularly, and I'm healthy and happy, and I take care of myself because I kind of feel like I'm worth it. But I used to not really like myself, and so my mental health state was not great for a long time.
Okay. So now I mentioned it earlier, but I want people to understand. They might not understand this term clean comic. And I know you told me off air that you aren't always a clean comic. And I want you to talk about that, but you're a clean comic now. Can you explain to me what that term means and how much harder it is in this business to be a clean comic?
Sure. Well, I mean, the term clean comic has its variations. I'd say that I'm, for the most part, a PG-13 comic. If you look at what I do, just about everything I say on stage can be said on television for a network audience in late night. However, my content is designed for adults. There are some clean comics who everything that they say is appropriate for people of all ages, completely family friendly. Now, I have a set that I can do. If somebody hires me, that I can go out and perform in a way that is completely family friendly. But most of the time, what I do is about PG-13. Now, early in my career, I was not a clean comic. I was actually a pretty dirty comic. My first album, Tell Me You're Proud of Me, is it's got some pretty graphic stuff on there. So if you're discovering me now and you go back and listen to that, you might go, oh, that's not what I thought I was getting myself into. I actually started doing clean material when I hit around my 40s because I started noticing audiences, they didn't want me to be dirty. A lot of what I was talking about, in my comedy before, were some kind of pretty specific stories involving sex and drugs and partying. And you get to a certain age where if audiences hear you, like I can talk about sex now as a concept, but nobody in the audience wants to see a guy in his 40s talk about his own sexual experiences. It's like, oh, that should be private. At your age, you should be keeping that private. We don't want to know. And same thing with partying. Like I can talk about partying as a concept or even talk about it in my youth. But if I talk about getting wasted now, people look at me and they're like, oh, that's just kind of sad. You should have it together by now. And so I started discovering being dirtier. People were more starting to get uncomfortable with it. Also, early in my career, I was, 2 steps away from being destitute. I was a little bit more cynical and a little bit just angrier as a human. And once I met my wife, my life started turning around, and I started discovering that my old material, the tone of it, didn't really ring true to who I was as a person. I was like, oh, well, I'm happy. Maybe my comedy should actually reflect that I like my life now. And so a lot of that kind of changed. And then coming out of the pandemic, I wrote the Big Dad Energy, which is a PG-13 rated comedy special. And I put that out there. And then one of the people that books Dry Bar Comedy saw it and then asked me to write that special. My special for Dry Bar Comedy is completely all ages appropriate. It's comedy for everyone. And so a lot of clean comedians that you'll see, their comedy is appropriate for everyone. I, a lot of times, don't even talk about being a clean comedian because when people hear clean comedy, the first thing that happens in their mind is they think like, oh, is this like Laffy Taffy level grandpa jokes? I want people to know that I'm funny. And I have followed porn stars with my clean comedy and crushed the audience. By the way, they're not doing pornography. They were porn stars that were doing comedy. I want to be clear. I wasn't just showing up to the set and standing on a wet mattress. You know what I mean? I was talking. I did a comedy special where there was a former porn star that had started doing stand-up comedy, and her act. It was funny, but also very filthy. And so I get up on stage, and I'm going to do my clean set. And so I had to kind of break the tension with the audience and explain to them, I'm going to move here. The sun is shifting, and I don't want to get glare. There we go. But yeah, I had to let the audience know. I was like, what you guys just saw was sort of the stand-up comedy equivalent of an X-rated website. My comedy is the website that you click to real quick when your parents walk in the room.
So, do you have any advice for somebody that would want to be a comic?
Oh, gosh. Are you sure you want to do it? That would be my first piece of advice. My second piece of advice would be to just follow your instincts. There are a lot of people that are out there, as far as stand-up comedy goes, that are going to tell you how to do something. They're going to tell you all of these tips. They're going to tell you how it works, what you need to do to be successful. And the first thing that you should ask yourself when somebody's starting to give you advice is, how successful are they? Because somebody can only give you enough information to get you where they are. And if they're not somebody that has gotten to where you want to be, then maybe their advice isn't necessarily what you want to take. There's going to be a lot of trial and error, and you have to give yourself permission to be terrible at comedy. And then you're going to get better the more you do it. Try to be self-aware, and don't just ask if something worked. Ask yourself why it worked. Watch other comedians and start to find out what is funny and why it is funny. So as you're watching them, they say a joke that hits. Start to ask yourself, what about that joke got a laugh? You have to watch comedy in the same way that a magician watches another magician do a trick. You're trying to figure out how it works. And it is a journey. So let it be fun. If you're doing comedy because you want to get famous, I have no advice for you. I'm not famous. I'm known, I'm notable, but I'm not famous. And I don't do it because I care about fame. I do it because for me, there is a really special feeling about being in a room of people that need to laugh and being able to give them that. For me, I try to remind myself that the comedy's not about me, it's about the audience. And if you can do that and humble yourself in that way and make it where it's not about them thinking that you're great, but instead about you giving them the escape and the joy and the connectivity that laughter can provide, then you're going to be well on your way to being happy doing this.
So, did you have any influences going through your comedy career that you looked at?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, a ton of influences. And a lot of them are the bigger, more mainstream influences. When I was a kid, I used to love sneaking into my dad's tape collection and listening to Eddie Murphy and also Cheech and Chong. For a guy that's a clean comedian, it was the dirty stuff that got me laughing a lot as a kid. And then discovering Richard Pryor. We had Showtime, and there was a Richard Pryor special that was airing on that. And that was the first time that I'd really heard him do comedy. And the way that he would jump into these characters and really take you into his world was amazing. And then I remember just like watching that George Carlin. He'd come out with a new special every year that would make me think about the world differently. And I realized how powerful ideas could be, especially when conveyed through a comedic lens, because we're laughing, so we don't feel like we're being taught something. But then when we walk away, we have this interesting argument in our head that starts to shift the way we think about the world. Uh, I remember in college, though, probably the first comedian that I heard that made me go, oh, I kind of want to do that, was actually Mitch Hedberg and his one-liners that were just so silly. I fell in love. He was the first person who's like CD I just had on repeat in my car. It was Mitch all together. And I would just listen to that over and over again and just die laughing. As a matter of fact, when I first started stand-up, I wasn't comfortable really talking in my own voice. So for the first like 3 months that I was doing open mics, I was basically doing a Mitch Hedberg impression.
Huh, that's interesting. So, are you working on any projects right now? I thought I saw something about you're going to be a main character or leading role in a show or something. Did I see that right?
Well, I have a movie coming out this Christmas. It's a family slapstick comedy. I'm one of the writers on it. I did punch-up writing for the script, and I play the dad of the main characters. It's called Gingerbread Men, and the story, it's a Christmas comedy about these two little kids that they eat magic gingerbread cookies that turn them into adults. And they run afoul of a loan shark mafia guy, and they basically have to try to figure out how they're going to become kids again, break this curse, and get away from him. I play the dad who helps them, and you find out later, spoiler alert, that he's in a lot of debt to that loan shark guy. And so we're all in a lot of trouble. It's a blast. It was a great script. It was so much fun to film. Everybody in the cast is so funny. I'm not sure the details of when that's coming out and what provider it's going to be on. But the producers, their last two films were big Christmas releases on Amazon and Showtime. So it should have a pretty wide net that it's casting. I'm just not sure where it's going to be out yet.
Okay.
And then the other big project that I'm working on will be my next special. I'm doing a one-man show called Kinder Words that's going to premiere at the KC Fringe Festival this summer, and then I will be recording it for a streaming special. And I'm creating something that I want it to feel. This show's going to be different than any type of stand-up show I've ever done. It's going to feel like Mr. Rogers, but for adults. And when I say that, I mean it's going to feel like welcoming. It's going to hopefully let the audience tap into that childlike sense of wonder. And I'm hoping that it's going to create the ability for the audience to have conversations. I think as society, we've stopped having conversations because social media has made it where we can just find people that agree with us. And so we don't have to actually compromise and listen to each other anymore. And I'm hoping to kind of create an environment where we actually talk to each other.
Okay. So I got one more question on the comedy before we jump into the 20 random questions.
All
Now,
right.
I know you worked with Dana Carvey, you worked with
Yeah.
Alicia Keys, and you worked with Damon Wayans. Out of the three of them, is there a story that you can just tell me off the top of your head that involves one of them?
Sure. Yeah, I'll talk about Damon Wayans. I got to open for Damon Wayans, and it was on Valentine's Day. And I got the call to open up for him. Like my wife and I, my wife is literally, she's cooking a beautiful romantic Valentine's Day dinner for two. And the booker of the Funny Bone calls me up and goes, hey, we want you to open for Damon Wayans tonight. And I was like, oh, it's Valentine's Day. My wife's literally making dinner. This is not good. Like, it's good to get the call to open up for one of your heroes, but this is a bad day to get the call. So I go down and I go, give me just a second. Can I call you back? Can I have 5 minutes to call you back? Here's something. If you're a comedian in a relationship, your partner wants you to succeed, but you always gotta put your relationship first, because no matter how good or bad comedy goes, comedy is a toxic relationship for you to be in with your comedy career. You need to have a real grounded human relationship, and that needs to be more important. So I went up to my wife and I said, hey, I know you're making Valentine's Day dinner right now. I just got invited to open up for Damon Wayans. What do you think I should do? I wanted to open up for Damon Wayans, of course. I'm so glad that she said, you have to do it. Because if she didn't, then I probably would have said no, and I would have felt like the whole night I would have been like, oh, why did I say no? Of course I said no because I love her, but like I would have been like in my mind really feeling like I'm missing out. And you know what? I would have been a terrible date on Valentine's Day because I wouldn't have been very present with my wife. Luckily, she 100% supports me, roots for me, cares about me. We weren't even married yet. This was 2020, literally probably the month before COVID happened, because this was February that year. I remember I made coronavirus jokes on stage even. But she said, you have to do it. So she kept dinner warm for me, and I went out, did a couple of shows, opening for Damon Wayans. I opened for him the next night as well. And and then I came home and had like Valentine's Day dinner at midnight. Uh, However, the story that I thought was really cool was Damon Wayans at first, like usually when I'm opening for a big name, you meet him before the show, you chat with him, but he was laser focused on the show. And I'll say this, I'm never offended when a headliner, because when I'm a headliner, I need my space. I'm not trying to be super social. I'll say hello to my openers, but I need to get in my own headspace and focus. And that's what he did. So I didn't even talk to him until after the show was over. But then after the show, he sat with me and the other opening act. And we just chatted for like an hour. He gave some great comedy advice, gave me his phone number. I've got his number in my phone. And he told me, he was like, if you want to be a writer, you got to start journaling every day. He said, I don't care if you write just like, oh, I had this for breakfast. Just get used to making yourself sit down and write every day. And since then, I have written, I've missed maybe 3 days in the last 6 years where I haven't actually written something creatively. And that was because of the advice I got from him.
Nice. All right. Well, listen, let's jump into these 20 random questions. You ready for them?
Let's do it.
All right. Question 1. Tell me about your background and your upbringing a little bit.
Sure. Well, I was born in Pryor, Oklahoma, a town of 8,000 people. My parents, I was a whoopsie daisy baby. When my mom got pregnant her senior year of high school. And so they were poor. They ended up getting divorced when I was about 3. And so, you know, when you're broke, a lot of times you're going to wherever the next part-time job is or the next place that rent is cheap. And so we moved all around. And I think to this day, I love to travel and I like things to be changing constantly. And so I think that that's probably one of the big reasons that I ended up doing comedy as a career.
Okay. All right. Question 2. If you became a WWE wrestler, what would your wrestling name be?
Oh, gosh. The Accountant. And I think I would just show up. I would literally wear like office clothes. And I would just be this exhausted guy that was just going out there. And, you know, he literally worked 9 to 5. And now tonight, he's just trying to make a little bit of extra money because he crunched the numbers. And you know what? The rent is due. That would be his catchphrase. The rent is due. So this is his side hustle. But he would be a guy that literally like hates his job, and he brings that hate of working into the office into the ring with him. He's disheveled. He's greasy. He's got pit stains in his shirt, but he's just still wearing like business casual.
It sounds like you've thought about this before.
That was the first idea that came to my mind. That actually was me riffing.
Okay.
As a little kid, I had this gimmick. I wanted to be a character named Dragonfire. I used to have this fantasy that I would be a pro wrestler, and that would be his name. This is before I even knew about luchadors, but the idea that I had was very much in that vein.
Okay. Question 3. Have you ever pulled a prank on someone, and what was it?
Oh man! On April 1st, Lyft, the ride share like Lyft and Uber, Lyft hired me. I was living in LA at the time to do an April Fool's prank. You used to be able to hit prank mode on your phone and prank the person that you're like riding with if you're riding with a friend, and they would treat it like a shared ride. So the people in the car, they heard this radio report about a semi truck turning over that was carrying a bunch of packages of bacon, and they said somebody ran into the street, stole a bunch of the bacon, and ran off. And there was an APB out for him. So the Lyft would pull up. I would get into the car with the other passengers with a garbage bag full of bacon. It was a weird day. But yeah, they hired me to do that all day.
Oh my God. All right. Question 4. Do you have any stand-up superstitions, things that you have to do before every set?
Oh, gosh. If possible. Oh, wait. No, I know what I do. This is the thing that I started doing not too long ago, is to calm myself. I will put my hands over my heart, like almost like I'm giving myself a hug, and I give myself a big, deep breath. And that kind of calms me. And anytime I'm feeling nervous, I make sure to do it. I usually will do it a few times before a set. But even if I'm not feeling nervous, I try to do it right before I hit the stage. And it allows me, because I'm somebody that has a lot of nervous energy before a performance. And so it helps ground me. And I always feel a little bit more calm when I do that.
Okay. Question 5. Who is someone in your life that has inspired you outside of the comedy world?
Oh gosh, you know what? I'm gonna say my mother-in-law. She recently passed away. Christine Allen was this amazing woman who supported her husband, but also was just this strong bohemian woman who really stuck to her guns as far as her beliefs. And she raised my wife and she raised my sister-in-law to be some of the most incredible people that you will ever meet. She was kind, an individual, and I really admired her, and I miss her. She's top of mind right now for me. So, yeah.
Okay. Question 6. What's the craziest or funniest story that ever happened between you and a fan?
Oh gosh, me and a fan. It's weird because I either become friends with somebody that's a fan, like, a lot of times they'll start following me on social media, comment on my stuff, and we chat. I'm trying to think if there's anything that has been super crazy. I've had fans hit on me after the show, but I usually move on with my life. So I don't think that I've had anything crazy, to be honest. I'm a big fan of people enjoying my comedy, but I'm also pretty clear that I'm married and that I'm a pretty regular guy. So nobody's gone crazy in a fan perspective.
Okay. Question 7. If you could have a conversation with one person from history, who would it be?
Oh gosh, that's a tough one. I'm going to say George Washington. I don't know if that's exactly where I would be, but like I would have a lot of questions because I think a lot of good things happened, but I also think that like there was a lot of things that the founding fathers did not take into account, like women's rights, slavery, things of that nature. So I'd have some questions for George that I would want to bring up. And I also would just want to chat about what the founding fathers intended, because I feel like everybody that talks about the Constitution starts talking about what our founding fathers would have intended. It'd be nice to just ask from the source.
Okay. Question 8. If you could do a celebrity boxing match against any other comedian, who would you want to fight?
Oh, Gilbert Gottfried. I'd kick his ass. I was just trying to think of somebody that would not beat me up. Really, that was the first person that came to mind. I feel like I could take Gilbert Gottfried.
Okay, question 9. Can you tell me an interesting story out of your career? I mean, you've already told me so many more, but...
Sure. Okay, so we were talking about pro wrestlers earlier, and I mentioned Brutus the Barber Beefcake. So I did this show once at the Double Door in Chicago. It's a great rock and roll venue, And it was this weird kind of a festival of a show that had stand-up comedians and burlesque acts. And there were freak show acts. I remember this one guy, he lifted 100 pounds with his nipple rings. It was very weird. Like at the end, his nipples didn't look like nipples. They looked like Swedish fish. But they had all sorts of stuff going on. And Brutus the Barber Beefcake, they brought him in. They built a pro wrestling match in the middle of this venue. So in addition to bands playing and stand-up comedy, freak show, and burlesque, they had pro wrestling. Like they were throwing everything but the kitchen sink out at this audience. And the show was going to be headlined by a wrestling match with Brutus the Barber Beefcake and a local wrestler named Grin. And before the match, like I'm a kid that grew up watching this guy. This is 2013, though, so he was, his career was on the downswing. And before the show, they started talking about the match, and I noticed Brutus is kind of drinking early on. And people that don't know Brutus the Barber Beefcake, his gimmick was that he would put you in a sleeper hold, make you pass out, and then he would get out a pair of gardening shears and give you the worst haircut of your life. So anybody that he wrestles, basically they're agreeing to let him take a sharp object to their head. So Brutus, it's 5 o'clock. He doesn't go on till 11 o'clock. He's already got a fresh beer in his hand. And he's taking what I think are probably painkillers. They could have been jelly beans. I have to, for legal reasons, say that. But throughout the night, he goes from being what seems like slightly intoxicated to just straight up faded in the corner. He's walking around muttering to himself. And at some point, I find out that the local wrestler is no longer comfortable getting in the ring with him and having him take, a sharp object to his head. So the promoter puts an arm around me and goes, look, I got to have him do something in the ring tonight because the audience paid for him. He's the main event of the whole thing. I can't refund everybody's tickets. So, Jamie, I know you were supposed to be doing stand-up comedy tonight, but would you be willing to cut a promo on the microphone, call out Brutus, have him put you in a sleeper hold, and give you a haircut in the center of the ring? And part of me is thinking, this is terrible, like as an idea. It's like getting in an Uber being driven by Billy Joel. I mean, sure, this guy's a legend, but do you really want to put your life on the line? But then the child inside me is saying, dude, this guy was Hulk Hogan's tag team partner. You got to do this. So against my better judgment, I was like, yeah, dude, I'll do it. And so at the end of the night, Brutus gets in the ring and he's talking on the mic to the people. And we went over what we were going to do, but he didn't tell me he was going to throw punches. I get in the ring. I call him out on the mic. I was like, these people don't want to hear you talk. They want to see you knock some jerk out, put him in the sleeper hold, and give him the worst haircut of his life. And he goes, why don't you come over here? And I go, oh, I'm a comedian. Come on. You wouldn't hit a comedian. This was way before Will Smith showed that you can hit a comedian and get away with it. And so I was like, you wouldn't hit a comedian. He's like, no, I just want to talk. So I get into the ring. And like I said, I didn't know he was going to throw punches. And if he'd have told me he was going to throw punches, it would have looked terrible because I would have tried to sell it. And I don't know how to sell it. I'm not a professional wrestler. But when a fist the size of a football comes at your face, you react. So this thing comes at my face and I go, boom. I kick my head back. My head tilts back every time, and it looked great. Then he puts me in the sleeper hold, and I know I got to sell this thing. So I start flailing my arms around, but I forget that I'm supposed to be getting tired and going unconscious. So Brutus whispers in my ear. He goes, you got to fall asleep sometime, brother. And I finally was like, oh, yeah, I do. And so I slowly drifted off. And then he lays me down on the mat and actually gave me a great haircut. I didn't even need to go get it fixed. He didn't even mess up my hair. It just took a little off the top, and I looked fine.
All right, yeah, I love that story. That is great. Question 10:
Yeah.
What is a pet peeve that you have?
Oh gosh, a pet. You know what? I don't need people to open the door for me anymore. This is what it takes for me to open a door. That whole motion, I got it covered. I don't like because I hate the awkward exchange. When I'm walking into a building, people hold the door for you, and there's always just that little bit of distance where it's too much. Like if I'm literally right behind you and you hand the door to me as I'm coming in, that's fine. But I don't need you to like step aside and open the door because then we have to have this awkward moment where I got to go, oh, thank you so much. And then you go, oh, no problem. Yeah, I know it's no problem. It's this. This is the motion. Your arm moves 3 inches. I don't need it. You're not helping me. I don't like to interact with a lot of strangers, and you're forcing the interaction. Just let the door slam in my face. I'll be able to open it.
Okay. Question 11. What would be the first 5 things you would do if you became homeless?
Oh, gosh. Well, the first thing is I'm going to find a shelter because I don't want to be stuck out if it rains or it gets too cold. That's going to be the first thing. Second thing is I'm going to get a good sign, and I'm probably going to lie on the sign. And depending on the time of year, I'm just going to probably write something like, just hoping to give the kids a good Christmas. I'm going to pull at your heartstrings, to get a few dollars. And then, you know what I'm going to do? One of the first things I'm going to do, other than buy food, is I'm going to get a smartphone and start a social media account so that people can make donations. And I'm just going to start documenting my life as I try to get it back together and figure it out. And then the fourth thing, I'm gonna go find some sort of a local vocational situation that can help me get out of the problem. Fifth thing, if we're being honest, I'm probably going to get a little bit of booze. Just a little bit. I'm not going to go crazy. But you know what? I'm going to be tired. I'm going to be sore, and it's going to help me sleep in an uncomfortable situation. I'm not going to have it every night, but when things are rough, I want it handy. Is that 5? Did I say 5? Okay.
Those were good. Those were good. You came up with those pretty quick, too, though.
Yeah, I know. Well, I think if you get in a dire situation, you got to come up with a plan pretty fast because, you're going to be sleeping out there in the elements.
All
I
right,
didn't even mention food, but I feel like I'm going to get food. It'll be fine. People like to feed folks that are unhoused.
Question 12. If you could be any fictional character out of a movie or a book for 1 week, who would you live as?
Oh, man. I'm going to say Jesus, but not like biblical times Jesus. I want Jesus powers now, right? Like I'm going to walk on water. I'm going to just go out to the lake and scare the crap out of jet skiers. That's going to be great. I'm gonna show up at the end of a race, and I'm just going to touch everybody's water bottles, and suddenly they're going to be getting drunk. I'm gonna show up at the morgue and freak everybody out because I'm bringing everybody back to life. I'm gonna have fun with this. The thing is, I think Jesus did a lot of amazing things, but he could have had a little more fun with his powers.
All right, question 13. If you could have dinner with any 2 celebrities, alive or dead, who would it be?
Oh, Tanya Harding and Nancy Kerrigan. Let's get them together. Let's hash this out.
Question 14. What's the last book you read?
Oh, gosh, the last book, the last book I read? Arsenio Hall just released a memoir. And I listened to it when I was a little kid growing up during that brief period of time. Arsenio Hall's show was only on for 6 years, but it was like I would stay up late to watch it. I grew up in a lot of neighborhoods where like I was the only white kid. And like the urban flair that Arsenio Hall had on his show felt like it spoke a lot more to the culture that I was surrounded by than Johnny Carson. It felt very youthful. He would have like pro wrestlers on. He would have like hip hop artists on. He would have alternative rock acts on. And like his monologue was always so funny. I think as a kid who loved comedians, Arsenio's monologue in that era was funnier to me than any of the other late night monologues.
Okay. Question 15. Do you have any hobbies outside of comedy, acting, and writing?
Oh, God. I got this amazing dog. She's 15 pounds of fury. She's half Cocker Spaniel, half Poodle, and her name's Millie. And right now, she is my hobby is just hanging out with my dog and playing with my dog. I like taking her on walks. I like playing this game called Monster, where I essentially just pretend that I'm a monster and she just loses her mind running around the house. I'd say these days that's my main hobby. I also, because I had cancer last year. I'm cancer free at the moment, thank God. But I took up running after that because I'm just trying to make healthier choices with my life, and I'm going to be running a half marathon later this year to celebrate a year cancer free.
Nice, good job, man.
Thanks.
If let's see, where am I? Oh, question 16. Do you have any phobias?
Oh gosh, I'm going to be right. Well, I got a colonoscopy tomorrow. Well, sort of. It's not a colonoscopy because as I had colon cancer last year, they took out my colon. I don't have a colon. I don't have a bag either. Like the small intestine is just doing all the work. But right before we started this podcast, I had to drink the colonoscopy prep fluid. So things are about to get wild down here. And I got to be honest with you, that's my phobia right now is crapping my pants on your podcast.
All right, question 17. When was the last time you cried?
Oh, gosh. If I crap my pants on your podcast, the answer is going to shift. But I cried Monday. I was driving by myself. My mother-in-law had her service. We buried her at Leavenworth National Cemetery, and I drove back home to get the dog and then to come back to her house. And I had a little bit of a cry there, just kind of thinking about her life.
Okay. Question 18. If you had to promote a product in a commercial, what product would you be willing to promote?
You know what I want to do? I got an idea for a product that I think America needs, and it's Fruity Pebble milk. You ever have Fruity Pebbles, the cereal?
Yep.
The milk at the bottom of the bowl after Fruity Pebbles, there's no better tasting milk in the world. I think they should just bottle Fruity Pebble milk and sell it. And you know what? Honestly, I kind of look a little bit like Fred Flintstone as is. So I'm your guy.
All right. Question 19. If you could put a rock band together, what would you name it?
Oh gosh, that's a hard one. I don't know. Oh, that's it depends on the sound that we're gonna have. I don't know. Maybe I call us Bi Furious because people would think that it's a pun on Bi Curious. But we're just upset consumers. We are furious about everything that we're buying. We're Bi Furious.
All right. Question 20. Last question.
All right.
If you died tomorrow, what would you want
I
your
hope not.
family, your friends, and your fans to say about you?
He didn't crap his pants on that podcast he did the night before he died. He was fine. Honestly, I would hope that people said that I was kind, and that I inspired them to be kind. I think that that's one of the most noble things you can strive to be is somebody that's kind to people. I think it's underrated. I think we put a premium on being tough and being strong, but I think that we should really elevate people who are kind a little bit higher than we do in society. And I would hope that people would say that about me.
All right. Well, listen, I appreciate you taking time to come on and talk about your career and having fun with the 20 random questions. If there's anything you want to say to the fans or anything you want to promote before we're done, go ahead.
Absolutely. I know if you're a fan of the podcast, there's a good chance that you're experiencing or seeing me for the first time. If you found the podcast through me, then you know what? Subscribe it, support John in this show. It's really cool that you're shedding a light on performers and entertainers and other people. And that's one of the best things you can do. It's free to subscribe and support. So do that. And if you're somebody on the other side that's just experiencing me, you can go to jamiecampbellcomedy.com. You can check out my specials. And one of the best things you can do for an independent artist, if you enjoy what they're doing, if you like their work, is to tell somebody about them. Share something on social media, share a link to a video that made you laugh, and just, spread that joy, keep it going around.
All right, hold on. And with that, the truth has spoken.